I think the talking points were wrong. I think the talking points should not be written by the intelligence community.
If there's something you would have liked to have seen the President or the Secretary of State do differently after this broke, it would have been what?
Oh, to move faster, to say, yes, this was in fact a terrorist act. I mean, it was so evident, and
why did they drag their
training
heels on it
camps all around there?
If you believe that, why did they drag their heels?
I can't, because I think this is a cautious administration. You see it in other respects.
All right, joining us now, NBC News' Tom Brokaw, and in Washington, NBC News Chief White House correspondent and political director and host of the Daily Rundown, Chuck Todd, Mark Halperin, and Ed Rendell still at the table.
Tom Brokaw, we want to talk about the IRS investigation, but first we just have to play off of what Senator Dianne Feinstein said, that it was evident from the very beginning this was a terror attack. And yet Susan Rice is sent out 5 days later with talking points that have been changed from the CIA 12 times in 24 hours. The White House just not being straightforward about it from the very beginning. The Susan Rice going 5 days after
that's the part that is still inexplicable to me, is that, you know, the debate that is going on prior to her appearance, that is going on now, about whether there could have been an appropriate military response, whether they're aware of what was going on. You cannot explain away Susan Rice's performance on those Sunday talk shows in which she said it was not a terrorist attack. It grew out of a domestic demonstration of some kind. She completely underplayed it and rewrote the script with the help of someone. I think we deserve to know who that is, because that's what the American public really finally tuned into. That was the first public response, and we have not had any kind of an adequate explanation from the White House or anybody in the administration about why she was allowed to say what she did. Did flags go off in her own mind? Right. I mean, she's a sophisticated diplomat. Did she go down and say, wait a minute? But nonetheless, she went on all those shows and in a very emphatic way said it was not a terrorist attack. This grew out of a demonstration that was spontaneous. That turned out not to be true
again, when you
whatsoever.
had the CIA saying from the very beginning that Al-Qaeda was involved, and they got changed 12 times in 24 hours, Chuck Todd, because the State Department officials said, boy, if we don't do this, you know, Republican congressmen are really going to, you know, going to come after us. What Ed Rendell said in the break, and what I thought from the very beginning, is this is another example of politicians being too clever by half, going, wait, we want the narrative that we're tough on Al-Qaeda. Instead of being smart enough to say, it was an Al-Qaeda attack. We've killed Osama bin Laden. We've done great things. But the war on terror continues, and we're going to keep fighting. That Americans would have rallied around the president. It always helps an incumbent president. This is mind-boggling. Yeah, it's stupidity. It's incompetence at the highest level, and then they're having to be untruthful to cover their incompetence.
Well, there's something was covered up here, right? So is it the cover? Were they trying to cover up that it was a terrorist attack? The one thing these release of the emails show is that it seems as if the White House was comfortable allowing that to be in the talking points, that State Department wasn't. Was the CIA trying to cover up the aspect that the Benghazi annex was a CIA outpost? Was the State Department trying to cover up the fact that they dropped the ball? The question is, what was being covered up? Whose decision was it to just then suddenly say, you know what, if this is the implication the White House is now throwing out there, for what it's worth, is that this was a bureaucratic, or they want to lead folks to believe this was a bureaucratic fight between state and CIA. It's very possible that that is what it was, and that the White House said, you know what, forget it, let's limit information as minimal as possible. That's potentially the case, but somebody, I mean, I think there are more unanswered questions at stake than any other of the three areas. So, right, there's a little bit at CIA. You feel like we've got an idea of where their head was. You do seem to think you've got an idea where the White House was, at least in the early parts. It's state that seemed to have been raising the most red flags on the original set of talking points.
So it's clear the president will be getting questions on this at the 11:15 news conference with David Cameron in the White House Rose Garden Inn.